Before we get rolling on today's show, PTF here, just to encourage you to subscribe to the In the Money Media free newsletter, the best way to stay on top of all the content we've got coming down the pike throughout the Triple Crown season and beyond. Very easy to sign up, and it's free. inthemoneypodcast.com/email. That's inthemoneypodcast.com/email. Next up on the show, it's the return of our Naira Pick Six segments. Very excited about this, and always excited to have with me a man whose work you read on inthemoneypodcast.com and various other places. You hear him behind the mic at Sam Houston. Nick Tammaro, what's up, my man?
Doing great, my friend. Good to be with you. Glad to be talking about these Pick Sixes, and we're now headed towards the Belmont Stakes. 4 weeks to go. Not
too bad, is it? And we'll get to see you in town as well, which I'm excited about. This sequence kicks off with race number 6, carded for the turf. It should be on the turf. We've had some good weather here in New York. I should knock when I say that because you never know. But 3 and up, fillies and mares, an allowance race going 1 mile. How do you want to light this candle, my friend?
You know, one of the horses that I was really taken by last year, and I think a lot of people were when she broke her maiden last summer at Saratoga, was Baby Blythe, who comes back off a layoff here for Shug McGahee, ended up running in the Jockey Club Oaks Invitational off of that big effort, and had the misfortune of running into Shantasara, who, of course, came right back to win the Grade 1 QE2 at Keeneland. So there was really no doubt that Baby Blythe's performance could be attributed to the quality of the competition that day. And I think she's very interesting coming back off the layoff. A mile is probably a little short for what she ultimately wants to do, but I think choosing this spot for Shug McGahee shows some real intent. And so I was pretty intrigued by her. She's going to be my top pick. The obvious horses also look like includes in the Pick Six, Lay the Groundwork and Belacqua. Lay the Groundwork getting to turf for the first time. They tried last time out. It was rained onto the synthetic. This is there's plenty of turf pedigree there on the dam side. And Chad Brown wins turf races with horses with no pedigree all the time anyway. Belacqua is first time in America for Graham Motion. I've felt like even though his numbers have kind of slid with these types, they've historically run better when Graham has had them a while. So it looks like he's had Belacqua for at least a couple of months, and I think she'll pack a pretty decent punch first time out. I wonder if Flavian Pratt will take advantage of there being a pretty short amount of speed in here with Miss Bella Chow, maybe the only pace type, and Lay the Groundwork close to the lead.
It's an interesting race. Now, I chose to take on Baby Blythe in my original reckoning of the race, just thinking maybe she needs it. Maybe it's too sharp. And because of that lack of pace you mentioned, this all led me around to wanting to take a shot with number 7, Angel Palm. This horse ran terribly on the U.S. debut, but I thought there was a litany of excuses. A 200-day layoff. The way she wasn't bet in the market tells you that nothing was really expected. The trip was probably too sharp, and she didn't break well. So I was thinking on the stretch out with a clean break, maybe a chance to wire this group or at least be, up and in it throughout. 12-1 morning line. Who knows if that'll appear, but this is a horse that I definitely want in my reckoning. I agree with you completely about the 5 Belacqua. Motion, even with, as you mentioned, cooling in this stat in the last few years, still does very well with the first time imports and just solid form overseas that I think makes her a good fit. One other I wanted to mention was the number 10 runner who is called Kerrone. And this is a horse who is a little bit interesting based on that old angle that we talk about all the time on these shows. If you look at the figures that she was running at 2 and project improvement for the potential that she's trained on, she could be the fastest filly in the race. So I was going to mess around 7, 5, and 10. I definitely, if there are ways to include without breaking the bank, Baby Blythe, I'll probably try to do that as well. Do you buy my case on Angel Palm at all, Nick?
Yeah, distance-wise was the only question for me. I mean, Brad's kind of giving up quickly on a horse that, not giving up, he's stretching out a horse that really had been most effective sprinting. But hey, I mean, it's one thing we've learned over the years that sprinters in Europe can generally go 8 to 9 furlongs in America without issue. So I don't blame you for giving her another shot. It also felt to me early in the Keeneland meet like making up ground on the turf was not the best idea. So I think she deserves maybe one more chance. It ends up being a pretty wide open race to get things started.
Yeah, for me, those straightaway 6s are almost like a 2-turn type.
Yeah.
Line.
I hear you.
So hopefully that will be okay from my point of view. Let's talk about the seventh race. 3 and up New York bred allowance types going 7 on the dirt in this spot. St. Selby looked extremely logical to me in this spot, coupled with gemography. But St. Selby, I just thought looked like the potential best speed, had some very good figures overall. There are mixed signals because this is a runner, on one hand, on form terms, just ahead from being undefeated, but also there is a vet scratch in the mix, which also gives me pause. But the last work signals readiness, and St. Selby, he's one that I want. The 9-7 Lilies I thought was interesting, tactical foot, plenty of finish, and this horse I thought just shows an admirable consistency overall. And then my goofy one to throw in is an old favorite, Brew Pub. I just feel like there's excuses for the last couple of runs for a horse that's going to be a monster price. So yeah, I was going to try to get out with the entry 1, 9, and 8. How do you see this one?
Yeah, I agree with you on pretty much every account. The interesting thing here will be how the pace shakes out, because St. Selby is the main speed on paper. It wasn't long ago that Foolish Ghost was a very, very strong one-way type of speed. So whether he still has that kind of early energy anymore really is the main question, because he could juice this thing up quite a bit. Listen to Your Heart was really at his best when he showed speed as well. So there are a couple of horses that could keep him a little bit honest early. Then factor in that Mass Marauder came up with this gigantic effort last time out from God knows where, and did it, from off the pace. But both that one and Bronx Bomber, who also won for Rudy Rodriguez around the same stretch of time, Bronx Bomber went wire to wire, and he had kind of become more of an off the pace type. I think you can rely on him sitting back to make one run. All that said, I mean, the morning line favorite 7 Lilies is a horse that seems to really run every single time. Looks like a horse that's going to be pretty tough to hold off late. I love the slight cutback, being second to Dr. Ardito, who's probably headed to a New York bred stakes company pretty soon. There's no shame in that. So I'm expecting 7 Lilies to have a major say in the outcome here, looking for him in the late stages. I thought that there really were very few alternatives. I agree with you on Brew Pub. I think he's a really interesting, potentially underneath type, maybe a little bit for the top slot, but he's going to get some pace to run at, and that's pretty much been all he needs in order to at least make a slight impact.
9-1 is A's, 8 is a B.
Yeah, that sounds exactly right to me. I wouldn't include anybody else.
Let's talk about race number 8, the Grade 1 Man of War, 1.3 miles on the inner turf. And I want to hear your opinion on this one. This is a race where I kept going back and forth and changing my pick. I'm okay where I've landed, but let's have you go first on this one.
Yeah, well, I will admit, and I try not to let this factor in so much, but I'm a Yabir fan. So, I mean, I really want him to run well. I was very taken by his effort in the Jockey Club Derby last year, and thought that his Dubai World Cup was Dubai Shima Classic was sensational. And even a horse with that big long stride and that powerful closing kick, he rolled home in the Breeders' Cup Turf as well. So it's great to see him running in some races domestically. With that said, if he came in off the Shima Classic, then he'd probably be 2-5 in here, or 3-5. And as it is, he's coming in off kind of a dull second place finish when he really didn't quicken, and he just sort of rode it out, and finished second, found a rival that was a little bit better on the day. He was 1-4 and came up short. So, now he comes back in 2 weeks, and it seems like coming back in 2 weeks is the biggest conversation going on in racing right now. So maybe Yabir will buck the trend and handle it without issue. I trust Charlie Appleby a lot. And it, this horse was mentioned for the Man of War very early. So could Charlie have just been putting a race into this horse to get him a little bit of fitness in lieu of doing a great amount of training in the morning to get him to go overseas? I think that's plausible. And so I think when push comes to shove, he is a better horse than Gufo. But it really boils down to those two. And I will say in Gufo's defense, his Pan American was better than any race he ran last year. And it's not even close, in my opinion. And I know he won the Sword Dancer and he got a better buyer speed figure in there. There was an enormous pace in that race that definitely quickened the final time. And he was a more professional horse. He was a more complete racehorse last time out. He didn't do any of his dumb antics late when he reached the front and pulled himself up or things like that. He just inhaled leader is a great comment. I mean, he just blew by Aban altogether. And Aban is, probably not a grade 1 horse, but he's no slouch.
Yeah, I actually ended up picking a Bond, and it's just a pace thing. It's
Okay.
just a pace thing because I feel like when you go back and you look at that Pan American, the kind of numbers a Bond laid down there, just in terms, I know he wasn't leading, but just in terms of his pace numbers, I think would put him in a beautiful spot, probably just right behind So High. Now, So High is going to get no respect in the market. He's going to get no respect from the riders. And I think that also could almost give a Bond like a sneaky chance to just get an absolutely perfect trip where in a race without a lot of pace, I think he could just get the jump. Now, he's not of this quality. He is definitely a slower horse than Yabir and Gufo, but I could also see this market going absolutely nuts for Yabir and Gufo in a way that this horse, honestly, at the 9-2 of the morning line, I certainly wouldn't want any lower than that, but I think you might get higher. I'm taking a little bit of a shot on the pace angle. We'll see what happens. Yabir, obviously the class horse, the best horse in the race. He has been unlucky, but you made the key point to me. It's just a little hard for me to back a horse that was just beaten at 1-4, coming into a spot where he could be at a disadvantage tactically. Still, one to definitely keep on side, is an A. I will cover a Bond, Yabir, exactas for sure. You mentioned Appleby, and he did have a great quote in the racing form that the PPs 100% bear out to me, which is just that Yabir wants left-handed, tight turns, firm-ish ground, and you look at what he's done under those circumstances, and the races are extraordinary, and then maybe that makes you be able to forgive the Newmarket run the last day. So it's an interesting point that I think the form bears out. And I think we'll be seeing a lot more of Yabir here. But I did also want to include, more of my opinion in the race is going to be to try to make magic happen with a Bond. But Gufo's credentials are absolutely undeniable. Has obviously beat a Bond rather easily. I just think with the different pace scenario expected today, I'm going to try to use him a bit more defensively. We'll see how it works out. You think I'm nuts on a Bond, or if you squint, can you see it?
I don't think you're nuts, but not for liking a Bond. But no, I kid. Generally my take on these horses is that their time to make hay is while the sun shines in Florida. These Todd Pletcher horses generally don't really reproduce their form outside of Florida.
Totally fair.
And so that would be my biggest worry. But see, and I wonder, and again, your opinion on your European form and how it translates. I think Yabir actually is more dangerous in a slow-paced race because they're probably going to be packed in tighter, and he's going to kick harder than everybody.
Get invited into the race and kick.
That's my fear, is that I don't think you beat these super long-winded, fast-finishing European types by turning it into a sprint. And so the race within the race will be how Joel reacts to what's going on in front of him, plus what William Buick is doing with Yabir. And so, yeah, it'll turn out pretty interesting in terms of tactics. I would imagine that both of them go off $1.10 or less. I could, there's a world in which I could see them kind of both going off under even money or less, because So High is going to go off 60 or 70 to 1, right? And Highland Chief's going to be probably at minimum 25. So yeah, that kind of puts them both in the mix to be 6-5 or less, which really doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things, but it's going to be treated as a 2-horse race. You're treating it as a 3-horse race and likely getting the value if you like a Bond.
Yeah, we'll give it a try. I was thinking it was going to be a 4-5, 6-5 situation.
I think that's probably right.
But we'll see. Is Easter interesting at all? I mean, has one angle I absolutely love, which is the closer coming into the closing into Blue Fractions on Time Form US. Now second off the layoff off the previous ginormous layoff. I mean, just form wise, it's tough. Pace setup wise, it's tough. But this is a horse. I mean, if we're right and those other three take that kind of money, I mean, at like 20 to 1, with my not wanting to pin my colors to Yabir's mask, does it make sense to maybe try to run one ticket through this horse?
I think, maybe one ticket. I think if you have a little skepticism with regards to Yabir, then you play this horse underneath who you like in exactas. If you want to try and beat Yabir altogether, and you use this horse under Gufo and a little bit under a Bond, maybe one pick 4, pick 5 ticket, pick 6 ticket, whatever you're playing. The interesting thing to me is that if Motion thought this horse wanted to stay short, then he would have probably gone to the race at Pimlico next week, which Graham runs in frequently. I mean, his barn is miles away.
Yep.
So he clearly wants to send him long. And even though last year his campaign was primarily at a mile. So I wonder if the time to bet this horse might actually be next time when he shortens up, maybe in a fast-paced race. We'll see. But I think there's a little bit of ability there. And this is a horse who, I mean, all things considered, was only 23-1 in the French Derby last year in a 12-horse field.
Yeah, I mean, there might be more under the hood than it looks like on form. Horse could also catch money with Pratt in Motion in a Grade 1 turf race. We'll see how they bet. It's a really interesting contest, actually, despite being a short field. Let's talk about this Grade 3 Peter Pan for the 3-year-olds going 1 mile and an eighth. I went with Set Sail in this spot. I thought it was interesting trainer angle type play, pretty aggressively placed in a graded stake off a maiden win for a trainer who I just think of as being like super duper conservative in Mandela. Has the speed to lead throughout, appears to be working well, and it feels like on his blood, the added ground should be his friend. I also really like electability, should get a great run in behind the top pick. Nice profile overall, brought along pretty slowly for Chad Brown. Just looks like one who should be set for a peak effort in the third run off the layoff. I was going to have lots of 1s and 2s on my tickets. How do you see it, Nick?
Yeah, I picked it 4-2. I picked We the People, who I think probably took the worst of it in the Arkansas Derby in terms of being wide and not really getting an opportunity to tuck in at any point. That pace was fast early in the Arkansas Derby. I also think there might be a kind of a wholesale rejection of the Arkansas Derby by the wagering public, and I wonder if that might be an angle now, because
the hate might have gone too far.
Well, and did we really expect much? I expected more from Cyberknife. He ran very poorly. But Barber Road ran
well,
right? I mean, yeah, I think he got like a 92 buyer speed figure. So, I mean, he ran his race, and Secret Oath came back and won the Oaks. So, but yes. Secret Oath, of course, was the horse you wanted. And I shouldn't say that We the People took the worst of it. We the People took the worst of it in the first 3 furlongs. Secret Oath took the worst of it in the whole 9 furlongs. But this is a huge step down in class. He really figures to get an excellent stalking trip outside of Set Sail and potentially electability. I do think it's interesting, though, that Timeform US users are probably just going to gobble up electability, who is way faster than these horses on Timeform US. And it's not because he got involved in super hot paces in either of his last 2, but he has just been steadily productive in both of those races, running hard throughout. And he's intriguing. It's interesting, going to be interesting to me to see where he ends up landing in this race early and late, because he did show a great amount of speed last time out. And I will say that Lunissima looked like he was going to go blowing by, and electability showed some real grit to end up coming back and winning that race. They ended up about 6 lengths in front of everybody else. Lunissima is a horse who speed figure wise took a big step forward in that race, came back and finished second in a race on Sunday at Belmont. Dropped 10 Timeform US points. So that's where the concern comes in about whether these fast races are actually going to end up playing out that way. Aqueduct, I will say, for, to put a little backing onto all the figure makers, might be the toughest place to make figures in the country.
Why is that, Nick?
The weather. The winter time can be volatile in terms of days where you have the track very fast. There's also a lot of wind. And so you will see rapid track speed changes almost race to race, which is of no fault of the track super. It's just kind of how things go at Aqueduct in general. So just something to keep in mind when you're looking at Aqueduct speed figures. They're tough.
You make such a good point about electability and that figure. So Beyer had the last one at 86. The Timeform number is what? More of an equivalent of like a low 90s?
Yeah, I think it was 111.
Yeah, so deduct 20 typically is a rough calculation
112
for that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, so that's a big 6 points. Now 3 runners have come back. One just didn't show form at all. The other 2, Lunissima backed up the number exactly, and Unbridled Bomber improved it by 11 points. So jury very much out, but Beyer may have that slow, and Timeform number may be right. We'll get a good line on the answer to that question based on what happens in the Peter Pan. Let's talk about race number 10, another stake. We've got the Bogey, Grade 3, 4 and up fillies and mares going 1 mile and a 16th on the turf. Nick, what'd you come up with in here?
Well, it's been a week since Chad Brown and Peter Brandt won a graded stake for females on the turf, so they're due. it was unbelievable to me that Peter Brandt spent $5.5 million on two horses that ultimately could end up running in the same races. But look, I mean, he's trying to develop a breeding program over here, and so I don't fault him. He's obviously got a plan in place, and he's executing it. So Rougir looks like, I mean, her best races are way too good for these horses. She is a Group 1 winner, went into the Breeders' Cup and went off 14-1 based on her win in the Prix de l'Opera. And granted, she was a little bit of an upsetter that day, but this is a really good horse. And while she is a little unproven on firmer ground, I don't think that's a big worry. She had kind of a nightmare trip in the Filly and Mare Turf last year. So, I mean, they're going to have to work awfully hard to beat her if she's got anything close to what we saw last year. Lamista might end up helping her out a little bit pace-wise. I'm not going to be surprised if Irad is told to put her a little bit forward. That probably gives her best chance to win anyway, given that her best effort in America last year was in the Beaugay when she was a little bit more forward. Stolen Holiday looks like the main speed on paper. Plum Ali has developed a little bit more speed lately, but I mean, it's going to have to take a big step backwards for Rougir to lose to these horses.
It makes sense. Now, this is one of these. I'm going to give you more conflicting data points. Hold multiple thoughts in your head at the same time. So much of me wants to be cynical about the form of Rougir, given that form was earned by a trainer who's since been arrested for doping suspicions. But you could have said the exact same thing about Speak of the Devil, who absolutely ran a hole in the wind last weekend.
Same guy, right?
Yeah. Same operation. So you could argue it either way. Rougir's the most likely winner. Absolutely an A. I just wanted to try to come up with something clever because of that little thought sticking in my head. And I ended up with Stolen Holiday. Coming off of a very difficult trip. If you key off the run 2 back, you can see a world in which she wires this field at a nice price. So I was going to call it 3-1 and hope to get the job done. Sounded like you were a pretty confident 1-2 in this spot. I also don't hate the idea of using the 4 and the 2 as backups if there are tickets in which that if you can make that cost work depending on what the rest of your tickets are. I also don't mind having some tickets where I'm just 1 and 3 in here, but just 1-2 for you. At the end of the day, you decided against Stolen Holiday.
I would loan A the 1 and use the 2 and 3. I think Stolen Holiday is more dangerous than she's going to be a very fair price for how dangerous she is what I should say. I also think that Plum Ali is getting better. I don't quite know if she's good enough to win a race like this, but I do think in general she's very much on the improve.
All right, we're running out of time, but we have one more race to do. It's the 11th, 3-and-up Filly and Mare, New York bred allowance types, going 7 on the turf. Nick, how are we going to get paid?
Well, I have to go back to my old friend Master of the Tunes, who I've been on numerous times in the past, and I think she likely needed her last start. I don't think it was a race that was ever going to unfold exactly the way she needed. Gets Jose Ortiz back on. This is a horse who I thought I backed a couple times last year at big prices, including that second place finish at 60-1. And I bet my brains out on December 3rd, trying to get her home at 18-1. She got into a little traffic trouble that ended up hurting her chances, but I'm intrigued by her back now, second off the layoff. And, the horse that I wish his barn was going a little bit better, but I find it very interesting that Jorge Abreu is trying Suellen Michigan on the turf and getting Lasix for the first time. She lacks a great amount of pedigree, but this is a horse that really showed some serious ability last year. So maybe more of a backup or a watch and see type. I'm going to use Master of the Tunes and Autumn Glory primarily. Autumn Glory's maiden win was very impressive, did so over a short price Chad Brown horse. They're going to get the setup in here. It looks like they're really going to move. I generally feel like 7/8 plays well for off the pace types on the Widener. So I'm going to focus on the 3 and 11, and I'll have some backups. I don't really trust anybody all that much of the off the pace types, but the 6 Finest Work feels like one that you kind of have to use. And I to a lesser extent, the 4 Rigby, who was victorious sprinting on the turf when she broke her maiden at second asking.
3-11 is A's, 8-6-4 is B's. That sound okay? I like Finest Work. I thought, has a good chance to get it done from off the pace here in the finale. Going out for a new trainer in Weaver, another who has that angle. If you look back at what she was doing last year and you project in figure improvement for age, makes sense. I am going to use, and I went back and forth on this one. I think in the end I am going to use Palace Gossip as the potential best speed. Now, I do suspect that there's a world in which that extra furlong could tell on her, but I just think she looks too good overall to leave out. I'll bring you back in for your opinion on her. And then I was with you on Master of the Tunes, just a consistent sort figure-wise, should improve second off the layoff, as you pointed out, shapes like she wants longer, and that expected fast early tempo could really bring that stamina into play. You got anything on Palace Gossip, or you think we're looking at a pop and stop deal here?
I mean, the concern is the pace. You know, I don't necessarily love that race. I know it's the same one that Master of the Tunes is coming out of, but I do think Palace Gossip ran well enough to be given pretty serious consideration. You have to like that she's improved in her last 2 starts. I don't know if getting Lasix maybe contributed a little bit. She did run well at second asking anyway. So the question for her is going to be the 7/8, the pace, and taking her game away from Aqueduct, where, you know, generally the 6 furlong turf races at Aqueduct play better for speed.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
7/8 at Belmont is tough on speed horses. It is.
You're right.
You got to be superior to win, especially in a forced pace.
It's sort of a double whammy, but with the actual added ground and the course configuration. But the numbers are telling me to leave in, so I'm gonna do it that way. But everything you're saying makes sense. All right, we've got more segments to come on the show. You're going to be sticking around, so I'll see you in a minute.
I'm ready.
Next up on the show, happy to bring together our Texas team. You saw Nick Tammaro in the other segment, so I'm not going to introduce him again. But I am happy to welcome to the In the Money airwaves, Jessica Paquette. Jessica, what's going on?
Everything's good, PTF. How are you?
Life is good. Life's good here in the bunker. A little chaotic, but that's the state of things during the Triple Crown. We're not here to talk about that. We may sneak in a little Rich Strike chatter at the end, but we're really here to talk about Lone Star Park, who we're so happy to have back in the fold. And these are horses you guys are going to be very familiar with from your time across the state. We're going to kick off talking about race number 6 on Saturday night. The post time is 4:55 Eastern, and we kick off with 3 and up dime claimers going a mile on the dirt. Jessica, let's start with you. How do you want to get this gimmick kicked off?
I think this is actually one of the tougher legs. I like number 5, Flip the Coin for Jaime Castellano. It's kind of deceptively good form, has a little bit of speed. I actually wonder what happens with number 7, Gordon Anthony. I wonder if Ernesto Valdez Jimenez really sends this horse to the front end for Broberg. Big Money Machine, the other Broberg horse, I think looms pretty tough at a short price. So I'm going kind of 5 as an A, then with 7 and 2 as B picks here.
5 with the 7 and the 2 on the backup line. Does that match your vision of this race, Nick? How do you see it?
Yeah, we'll have to see. They're not both end zone athletics, but usually with Carl, whoever wears the red cap is the more fancied of the two. I learned through a couple of months at Lone Star. I will admit that I tried to convince a trainer to claim Comedian last time out because the rider that he had in the 4 prior starts, God love him, he has a very hard time getting away from a 4 or 5 wide trip. And this horse was really in tough spots over and over. And so Danny Pish ended up claiming him for 10. This is a horse who goes all the way back to having been brought up with Steve Asmussen at Oaklawn years ago. So I think Comedian's going to be tough. And I know he's the morning line favorite. Obviously, he comes in off an effort that would make him pretty tough to handle. That was also a day where being inside was a decided advantage, and he was outside the whole way. Not surprising given the jockey. He gets Carlos Montalvo here and should get a good trip from just off the pace. I agree with Jessica that Flip the Coin Jan is very dangerous from a pace perspective. How Gordon Anthony is ridden early will likely dictate what happens in the stretch because a Big Money Machine needs things to develop a little bit in front of him. So I'd probably lean on Comedian and back up with the logicals like the 2, 5, and 7.
All right, sounds good. As we move on to leg B of this pick 5, it's race number 7, 3 and up claimers, the $15,000 level this time, going 5 furlongs on the turf. And Jessica will throw the ball back in your court for your thoughts on this one.
My strongest opinion on the card is number 5, Samurai Cause. Unproven on the turf, but ton of Gratz influence in the pedigree. Jared Caldwell hits at around 22% off the claim. He and Lane Luzzy, they have a terrific season at Sam Houston, and that success has continued. If this one takes to the turf, I think he fits here very well class-wise.
Is this a stone cold single for you or any?
Bold. I'll go bold. Yeah.
All right, that's the way to do it. You know, go big or go home. We've seen that from you before. We'll see how it.
It doesn't always work, but at least I try.
Exactly. I mean, that's the thing. You got to have it's a game of opinions. Nick, what's your opinion in this 7th race at Lone Star?
Yeah, you know, I actually liked Sam's time quite a bit when he made his turf debut at Sam Houston a couple of starts back, and he ran poorly. That was probably a tougher than par 3 life 25. And he came back to wire a field last time out at 5-1. And of course, it was a night where I wasn't paying. It was a day card actually where I wasn't paying attention to Lone Star, and so I was very heartened to see that happen. I think he'll be tough again. Actually, I think he's the main speed on paper, and the 5/8 on the turf obviously is good for pace horses wherever it's run. It seems a little bit better at Lone Star than it was at Sam Houston. We kind of have a longer, lusher type of turf course, and theirs is very short, very fast, and I think speed gets out and just sort of is able to dictate to everybody else. Agent McGee looks obvious as an alternative to me. So does Saturday's Gold. I think each of them are horses that you'd want to use as a backup, but I think you could probably lean somewhat heavily on Sam's Time again. Carl Broberg, just 13% right now at Lone Star, but that's a number that will increase as the meet goes on.
So Sam's Time to me is just one of those all or nothing types. I've every time I've taken a stand against him, I think at Sam Houston were the times he won, and then the days I got suckered into him would be when he doesn't show up. He's kind of a little bit. I mean, he's just so inconsistent to me.
8,
yeah, I agree.
9 for Nick, and yeah, what you feel free to piggyback on that.
Yeah, no, I agree. He's a horse who really won impressively early in the meet, and I kind of thought that he'd clear the allowance conditions on dirt without issue. And even though he won at 2 Life, I mean, that's not quite obviously a one other than, and then was disappointing at Delta, and so off to turf, which is never really the plan, but at least it seems to be playing out well so far.
Are you cynical about the Samurai Cause's chances to make the switch to the turf, or you just found?
No, I think there's definitely pedigree there, and I've got tremendous respect for J.R. Caldwell and Lane Luzzy. Great combination over the last 6 months or so. But I wonder if he'll just have a little bit too much to do. That was my only concern.
Race number 8, we've got 3 and up Texas breds, an allowance race going a mile on the dirt. Field of 9 going postward. We've got a 4-5 favorite on the morning line in number 2, Popeye's Heart. Jessica, are you with or against?
With, unfortunately. I hate to eat some chalk here, but for me, this is a single move on, get through this race. Checks all the boxes, lightly raced, looks like a standout on paper to me. I really like this horse stretching out second off the layoff, and Austin Gustafson, really sharp young trainer.
Feels like a good setup should be on offer as well, adding to the appeal. Nick, can we make it a chorus for Popeye's Heart?
Yeah, the only other horse I'm going to use a little bit would be the 6 with the band. Popeye's Heart is clearly the one to beat. The funny thing is this horse was 41-1 at this level last time out, and he's going to be 4-5 even money, something in that range this time around. So it's always a little tricky to take. You didn't even miss the wedding. He only finished 3rd last time out, but now you're going to have to take that incredibly depressed price. With the band is a horse that likely has been wanting to go long and shortened up 3 starts back to finish second behind Daryl's Little Diablo. I thought the cutback was a good idea that night. I think this is a horse who can settle and make one run. It does feel like they're going to move in here, and that's going to work to the advantage of Popeye's Heart, but it might also help with the band. Push comes to shove, he's probably more of a placing chance, but this is a horse who really has run well enough consistently and just might be getting into the right place at the right time.
More of a Popeye's Heart as an A with the band as a B, or are you going to use them equally?
That would be my main approach, but I might upgrade with the band to be more of like a B plus with some of the backup horses along the way, because my A line is pretty thin so far.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, and a very good point about ticket construction and how you can be a little bit elastic depending on your holistic approach to the sequence. Probably a topic for to go into much more depth on another podcast, because we got more ground to cover here, starting with this 9th race at Lone Star and these 2-year-old maiden Texas bred fillies going 4.5. Really curious to get your guys' thoughts on this one. All first-time starters. Jessica, I know you love your pedigree, so what stood out to you in here?
This is an interesting group. So number 6, Fast Track, looks really well met here. The dam was a stakes-winning Texas juvenile. Makes a ton of sense. Number 8, Gold Memories. Dam was another useful Texas bred, stakes placed. For a bit of a price, though, I'm intrigued by number 2, Kaylee's Shadow, another horse coming out of the Caldwell barn. One thing I really enjoyed getting to see when I was down at Sam Houston in person this year, very few people's horses looked as good as J.R. Caldwell's, and no one looked better. At every level, whether they came out kind of at the bottom or one of the stakes horses, they came out looking the part. And his young horses also came out really well prepared, even a couple of them that were a little bit goofy and a little slow to develop mentally. The way they were handled, they got a positive experience kind of from the moment they walked to the paddock till they got into the gate, and it paid off.
Do you want to grade those into A's and B's, or how would you put that in those terms?
I'm going to use all 3 as A's here. This is I think you can go a lot of ways with 2-year-olds. Of course, you want to see them in person and on the track as much as you can, but constructing a horizontal ticket, you take what you get.
Yeah, that's fair enough. So it was 6-2, and what was your third number in there?
Yeah.
6-2-8. Nick, what are your thoughts on this one?
I mean, annually, Steve Asmussen sort of unleashes an assault in the 2-year-old division. So I would imagine Fast Track will be pretty tough to handle. Fast Anna Progeny seem to be ready on debut. This is a rarity in that Doug Scharbauer, who, of course, his father owned Ali Sheba. This is a family that goes way back in Texas racing. I don't ever recall him having a horse with Steve Asmussen. So this is a new client for a barn that obviously the winningest barn of all time. The interesting horse in here, and I completely agree with Jessica about both Caldwells in a way. Let Freedom Bling might actually be, we'll see how quick he is. He's only worked 2 furlongs 3 times. But Glitz and Glamour for Carl Broberg was taken for $72,000 at the TTA sale last year. The richest auction purchase of anybody in here. Generally, Texas breds are homebreds and some lower level auction buys. And this one seems to be working pretty well. So we'll see if this horse, we won't get a window into it in the pick 5, a little difficult race placement from the racing office, but I would throw Glitz and Glamour into the mix along with Jessica's 2, 6, and 8. And I would probably find a way to include Let Freedom Bling as a backup.
Okay, so very, very spready here.
Yeah, very spready. Yeah,
sounds like
very spready for Fast Track to win by the length of the stretch.
Would you press a little bit with that in mind and make
Probably,
it more?
Yeah, I would use the 2, 3, 5, 6 as A's and then press the the 2, 3, 6, 8 as A's and then press the 6 a little bit more.
2, 3, 6, 8, and then who was the one you wanted to throw in as a B in this spot?
I would use the 5 as a B.
Okay, and the 5 as a B. That brings us along to the pay leg. We've got 3 and up Texas bred maiden special weights going 7.5 on the turf. Jessica will ask you the key question. How are we going to get paid?
Number 7, Cold Night Air, I think gets loose on the lead. And if she does, sometimes these, maiden fillies on the turf, loose on the lead might be all you need to get the job done. One horse I just got stuck on at Sam Houston this year was Lumberjack Leslie. I'm still stuck on this horse. I'm not going to leave her off of my tickets because that will inevitably mean she wins. I don't know if she's seemingly good enough at this point to get that maiden win, but I am going to use her. I think she could at least get a piece of it. Just Claire, I think, wants to go a little bit longer, but she does seem to be steadily heading in the right direction. So number 7, Cold Night Air, kind of an A pick, and I'm going to back that up with the 3 and the 10.
Love it. Nick, how about you? What's going to get us home here?
Yeah, I mean, it remains to be seen how optimistic Cowgirl takes to the turf. She was entered for turf last time out at Sam Houston, and we had to move the races to the dirt. So she's the horse that on debut was a very solid second, coming from just off the pace, then improved going longer. The morning line favorite, which doesn't exactly add any appeal, having to take a short-ish price, maybe a little bit easier to do so than to take Expect the Boss, who's been really disappointing throughout her career. This is a horse who was expected to clear the maiden ranks quite a time ago and has failed as the favorite 3 times. So I would end up using both probably as backups. I agree with Jessica, and I thought just Claire's third place finish behind Honor Given and Cause I'm Divine 2 starts back was actually a better race than it looks on paper. There was no pace on that night at all, and she still put together a pretty decent run to finish third. So I would upgrade that performance as well. And Lumberjack Leslie's lone turf race recently was that just Claire race. It really wasn't bad. And I mean, she's a horse who's seemingly run a million times. But
I picked her every single one of them, I think. But
becomes a pet horse, right? No harm there. We've all done it. So yeah, those seem like the right ones that are going to be decent prices. I would take Cold Night Air of the shorter prices as an A and probably back up with Expect the Boss and Optimistic Cowgirl.
All right, recap those numbers for me just for my little notes here. I'm putting together for the plus people.
3, 7, 10 as A's, 6, 9 as backups.
All right, there you go. And you can get away with being spready in a couple of these legs when we're as thin as we are. Definitely some clever tickets to be put together for Saturday night at Lone Star. Definitely, one of the interesting signals this time of year, and we're very happy to be working with them. We'll be hearing a lot of Lone Star chatter, and we'll probably be reconvening this team several times. Now, we went through that quickly enough that it does give us a minute to talk a little bit more about Rich Strike, the surprising decision to not run in the Preakness. But before we get to that, Jessica, you are the person who I have on my shows most frequently, who I feel like is definitely best qualified to talk about this incident. After reading a bit more about it, I'm tempted to maybe even call it Tempest in a Teapot about the actions after the Kentucky Derby, where somebody joked that, what a badass this Rich Strike is. He comes from nowhere to win the race and then tries to eat all the other horses. What was going on there? There was some criticism from what I've seen seem misguided about the Outriders' actions. I just want to get from somebody who actually understands horsemanship, your perspective on what we saw there.
Well, testosterone and adrenaline are a hell of a combination, especially on a horse that is a notoriously bad actor. There are photos of him throughout the week, kind of pulling similar shenanigans and being difficult to handle. Temperament aside, I think Greg Blassie did the best he could do under a really difficult circumstance. I would have loved to see the cameras pan away simply because sometimes when you're trying to keep everyone safe and doing the best you can, it doesn't always look that great. These are 1,000+ pound animals. And what Rich Strike was doing was not only trying to savage Greg, I mean, biting his leg, biting his arms, biting the pony, he was also grabbing the reins of the pony. And I know one of the things that the armchair quarterbacks on the internet were saying, well, why didn't Greg just let him go? There's no guarantee that that horse would have stopped going after him at that point. Kind of horses can singularly focus, especially an intact male horse full of testosterone and adrenaline. And if he lets this horse go, he then has no leverage. If the horse comes up on his pony, rears up and comes on top of them, or goes after someone else. He was doing his best to keep everyone involved, his pony, Rich Strike, and the jockey safe.
Incredibly well put. What a great answer. And you had made an interesting point to me about his bloodline being a potential factor in his temperament. If you wouldn't mind expounding on that for a minute for the listeners and viewers.
So when it goes well, it's called line breeding, when a horse has similar parents on all of his sides. He's a son of Keen Ice, who is a son of Kerrone, who is by Smart Strike. And then his dam is by Smart Strike. So that is a lot of Smart Strike kind of every which way. And Smart Strike was a tremendous stallion. They do a little bit of everything. They're fabulous sport horses. They're also not always the most temperamentally pleasant to deal with. So you get kind of this influx of all of the good on both sides, but you also you have to take a little bit of the bad too. And I think he got a little bit of the worst of the temperament.
With an answer like that, you've got a future in politics. Should you ever want? You've never said you've never said he's this. He's bred to be crazy. You couldn't say it in a nicer way.
Well, horses aren't like horses. That's the thing. It's a dangerous thing to assign these human characteristics to horses. Like they don't wake up one day and say, "I'm going to be mean" or "I'm going to be bad." They're just horses acting like horses, and we have to react to how they're acting. They don't have the kind of the fully formed frontal lobe to be like, I'm a mean horse. That's a human thing. Humans are mean.
It's a great point. And yeah, it makes me realize we need to ask you some more horsemanship questions along the line, because I think it's a chance for people, even dyed in the wool people who breathe, sleep, and eat horse racing to learn something. So I appreciate that. Nick, let's bring you back in to talk about the surprising nature of the decision to pass the Preakness. What do we think? Again, we've heard the stated reason that the connections feel like it's just in the best interest of the horse, and that they had this idea to come back with a certain amount of time between races. And obviously it's very admirable. And if that's, if the horse truly needs that, I mean, of course, you put the horse first, but I don't know, even in my heart, cynical horse player that I am, I have trouble accepting that the explanation is as simple as that. You can just tell me if you think I'm being a jerk about it.
No, I think you're not quite being harsh enough, but to be perfectly honest. But yeah, no, I think it has to do with exactly what you just said. I mean, one of my big racing pet peeves, and I could probably just stay off social media and I wouldn't be bothered by this, but this whole such and such is doing right by the horse, blah, blah, blah. So everybody running in the Preakness is just throwing their horse to the wolves, right? If you run your horse back in less than any amount of time, you're throwing your horse to the wolves. It's ridiculous, right? Every single trainer, every single top level trainer is trying to do what's right for their horse. Maybe not every single one, close enough, right? All of them at this level are doing what's right. Some of them are influenced by owners. Some of them are influenced by other things. It's not as if they are virtuous and everybody else is not. They're taking an approach that was likely hatched when they didn't know they were going to run in the Derby, number one, or didn't think they were going to win. And it's okay for them to not think they were going to win. None of us thought they were going to win either. So it really is no shame. So the mistake, of course, and I said this to both of you when we were talking before, is that horses that are trained to be at peak fitness for a race like the Derby are generally best suited to running back quickly. And if you run back quickly, you're still kind of riding that wave. It's why we've had a lot of Triple Crowns on the line over the years. And it's not so much running the 2 races in 3 weeks or 3 Saturdays. It's running the 3 races in 5 weeks that becomes the problem, because now you're talking about another week of activity. And do we have to send him out for a workout, or do we just gallop? Do we 2-minute lick every day? Things like that. And training methods really come in. This is a horse that obviously somehow was ready to run a huge race in the Kentucky Derby, did so courtesy of a massive pace setup and one of the most masterful rides you're ever going to see in that race. And so he is supposed to be pressed on as much as possible, in my opinion. That's the side of it where I'll play, fake horseman. On top of that, the game the game needs horses to run in big races, especially horses that are popular, that have just won big races, that have done things like this. And so I will admit, I mean, it seemed like the group that in unison was applauding the decision was bloodstock agents and owners. And so I don't blame them. I have great respect for both of them. They're members of the industry, but it's like, take the horse player's approach for a second. When you have a horse like this, you want to see them run. You want the opportunity to bet on or against them, and the game benefits from it. So good luck to him and the connections in the Belmont. But I call me disappointed about him not being in the Preakness for sure.
It's a strong opinion, and it's got some validity. I mean, just to your point about the you look at the record of some of these long shots running back in 2 weeks.
Look at Mind That Bird.
Yeah, Mind That Bird ran a winning race. One of the only a couple of times he ever ran a winning race. Again, I think 2 of Charismatic, who went there as something like an 8-1 shot, like Rich Strike would have been. Jess, I want to bring you back in though. You're somebody I trust to put horses' interest, first more than most of us, just because you spend so much time around these wonderful animals every day, really. I just want to get your thought on that. I mean, I take Nick's point. I mean, it's certainly not automatic that it's what's best for the horse. And I think there's plenty of horses that would respond to coming back in 2 weeks without an issue. I was assuming they were talking more that there was some specific aspect of Rich Strike that maybe required the extra time. But as a real horse person, how do you view this question?
Well, that's the question I have, because Nick's points are all really valid. And I think it is easier to keep fitness. The 2-week turnaround actually is a little bit easier on the majority of horses, providing nothing goes awry. Like we plan and horses laugh is kind of the way everything goes with them. But I wish there was a little bit more transparency about why this is in the best interest of the horse. And they don't owe us that explanation. I understand they don't have to tell us, but is this a horse that goes off his feet a couple of days after a race and kind of drops some weight? Does he get ulcery? We've seen videos of him galloping and he looks as fine as he ever did. He is not a horse. It clearly is not a horse that impresses much anybody out in the mornings or on the track. So I would just be curious, is he a horse that's hard on himself? Did he not, did he grab himself? Is there a reason that he needs a little bit of extra time? Again, they don't owe us that. I'm idly curious. For me, just for a little bit of context, when I was horse showing my off the track thoroughbred, he was not a horse that could kind of go do back to back horse shows each weekend, because he would always drop weight at the horse shows. He didn't eat as well out of his normal routine. And if we kind of push the envelope a little bit, you'd start to see it. His condition, he'd lose some condition, he'd lose some enthusiasm. So while many horses can just kind of keep going each weekend, not all of them can. I get that. So, but I'd just be curious why.
It would be great if we were in a game where that information was required to be disclosed to the public, wouldn't it?
It would be nice.
All right, we got to go. We got another guest in the green room, and he's Australian, so he gets grumpy when I leave him in there too long. So we're going to let you guys go, and we will. You don't want to make those Australians angry. You wouldn't like them when they're angry. We'll talk soon, guys. Appreciate your help.
Bye.
Thanks, Pete.
The Monmouth Meet is underway, and with the start of the Monmouth Meet comes the return of fixed odds betting, powered by BetMakers, to American racing. This is an exciting new way to bet, changes the nature of value, and puts the power to get great value right in your hands, because the odds you bet are the odds you get. Revolutionary stuff and really worth checking out. You're going to be hearing so much more from the BetMakers and about fixed odds betting on the In the Money Media Network. It's Jersey now, Monmouth at Monmouth only, but I have a feeling this one is going to be expanding, hopefully, like PASPA, across the nation before too long. Anyway, check it out. Fixed odds betting, powered by BetMakers, featured right here on the In the Money Media Network. Next up on the show, we keep Nick Tammaro. We're making him be very busy today. And we bring in a guy who's been on the shows a lot lately, and he's going to be on the shows a lot in the future because he's part of a movement that, we're very excited about over here. The fixed odds coming into Monmouth right now. Monmouth, just at Monmouth, could be expanding out from there soon. But we've got a great opportunity to talk about this in the context of Monmouth's Saturday card. We'll talk about the first 5 races, which are also make up the win early pick 5, earliest pick 5 in the nation, and a great opportunity for players as well. And then we'll also talk about the feature, go on some tangents along the way. It should be fun. Dallas Baker's the man I'm talking about. Dallas, how are you?
Peter, Nick, listeners, viewers, good morning or afternoon, whatever it is where you're listening to, watching, I should say.
Covering all your bases. Well, then some will be listening. We got the audio, we got the video. It's a good chance to tell the video people that you can subscribe to the podcast versions of the show on iTunes, and tell the listeners you should definitely be subscribing to our In the Money Media YouTube channel, because we've got some fun stuff and some extra promotions going on over there as well. Let's talk about this first race at Monmouth. We go postward. We're scheduled to go postward, and hopefully we will this week, with a field of 9 for these $30,000 claimers, fillies and mares, 3 and up. I've got the prices here in front of me. Let me ask you, Dallas, from your perspective, who did you think the most interesting runners were in here?
Well, it was a pretty wide open race. We ended up with, surprise, Paco Lopez's favourite on Little Miss Sassy at around about the 5-2 mark, $3.60 in the decimal language. Just ahead of Lady Zeta at 3-1, $4 decimal, and Tactical Range and Expect to be Ready. Next pick at the 9-2 mark, $5.50. So obviously with that market pretty tight and condensed, we've assessed it as the race having plenty of chances.
Now, I know you can't bet in your role with BetMakers, but if I were to ask you, if you put your old hat on of being a punter as opposed to a bookmaker, is there one that stands out to you as the potential best value, the one you're the most worried about laying standing at the current prices?
Well, I think one of the great things that we saw last week, Peter, is how fixed odds doesn't encapsulate, what would you call it, the emotional sort of betting as well. To like Paco Lopez always is going to start a shorter price because, naturally he rides every second winner. But for leading jockeys, leading trainers, popular horses, they'll always start unders on the tote because you get a lot more sentimental money for them. But with bookmakers, there really isn't any sentiment. It's just about trying to work out who's what's the best risk and how to play the book. So point being, I think what people are going to see is this, as the renaissance begins and the revolution takes hold, is that you're going to be getting a lot better prices about a Paco Lopez horse. So I think one of the earliest things I learned in the punting world, when you talk about value, and a lot of people think that a horse that's 20-1, 30-1 is a value bet. A value bet, you get most of the value at the top of the market because bookmakers are willing to take those horses on. Now, if a horse is a 20-1 chance, it's a 20-1 chance. It doesn't mean that it's value. But if you think it's a 2-1 chance, you're getting 3-1 about it, well, there's your value. So I would think in the first race, if I was playing the books, I'd be backing Paco because I assume he'll start a lot shorter on the tote.
Very interesting. So a little bit of a vote there for Little Miss Sassy. A couple of terms I just wanted to find there. Use the term unders, bookmaking term, basically for what we would call an underlay, a horse whose price is too short.
Yeah, it's quite simple. I mean, depending on how people start wanting to assess how they do their fixed odds markets, you do your handicapping as you would normally do, come up with the price, and obviously if your price is a shorter price than what the market is betting, you're getting overs, and conversely unders. So So I mean and the key to it is the key to winning now for people who are serious about betting, and as fixed odds rolls out, is that price shopping and trying to secure overs. That's the game. That's what you want to be playing. That's what you're looking for, to try to read the market and to try to strike when the price is at its best, so you're getting the best value and maximizing your chance for profits.
And you can do that a lot more directly in a fixed odds market. But of course, it's exactly what we're looking to do all the time in tote bets as well. One of the ways to do that is with clever betting strategy in a bet like the trifecta or superfecta, or in this case, pick 5. Not too many that I know better at writing tickets and trying to extract some of that value from the way that tickets are constructed than Nick Tammaro, who we'll bring in now to ask him, how would you be looking to kick off this pick 5 from a ticket making perspective?
Yeah, I like Tactical Range. I thought this feels like a race that's going to have a decent amount of pace, and I think that's one of the things that you want to integrate into your approach. So I felt like she probably made a decent amount of sense coming from off the pace, shortening up to 6 furlongs. I thought that Lady Zeta was certainly worthy of plenty of consideration as well. And Little Miss Sassy, who Dallas discussed with Paco, felt like a kind of a primary use type of horse coming back off the short layoff. Jose Delgado is a guy who's going to win a lot of races at this meet. And even if he went 0 for 2 the first card, I think that'll reverse itself pretty quickly and could end up starting right here.
4-1-8, is that what I'm hearing, Nick?
Yeah.
Let's move this along to race number 2. We've got a starter allowance going 6 furlongs on the dirt, field of 7 going postward. Nick, we're going to keep this one with you.
Yeah, I thought that the 2 Free Dancer was a real threat to go the wire to wire here, and at 3-1 on the morning line, this is a horse who I think represents a little bit of value, and maybe we'll see in the fixed odds market if this one can be a little bit of an over. Since we're using the parlance. But I think this is a horse you might get a decent price on at 7-2 or 4-1. Comes in off a win in wire-to-wire fashion at Penn National, albeit on a sealed track, but did so through some pretty strong early fractions. So I think if that can be duplicated, this horse is a threat to go wire-to-wire. Monmouth historically had a reputation as a very speed-favoring track, and I think that's kind of gone the other direction in recent years. There have been more days in a lot of my race watching there where there was an advantage to being towards the outside. So we'll see if maybe this is a horse that just might outrun any kind of track profile given the big pace advantage. I kind of wanted to land there in large part because I don't trust Mi Tres por Ciento, who is going to be the likely favorite in here. This is a horse who was claimed by Wayne Potts 2 starts back, now in Bonnie Lucas's care as Potts is suspended, and obviously was way over his head last time out. But I'm a little concerned there about how much meat is left on the bone with this horse. I thought that he's been a little dull in his last couple of starts. And oftentimes when you're talking about a lower level claimer, this is a horse you could be sliding the wrong direction. So it made me feel good about really taking on Free Dancer as a primary use.
I like it. Any dimension is backups, or is it really Free Dancer focus for you?
I would probably use Mi Tres por Ciento just once as a backup, along with Rookie Salsa on the outside for Claudio Gonzalez. I have a feeling Claudio Gonzalez is going to unleash a pretty strong number of horses at this meet, using some of his in the last couple of months.
All right, Dallas, let's bring you back in. The biggest question being, what kind of a price are you going to open up a Free Dancer at? And does Nick's enthusiasm for the horse give you any pause?
Well, I'm glad Nick's confident, Peter, because this is a race an old mate from the Sydney betting scene would refer to as a pick-up sticks race. Throw the sticks up in the air, pick up one, and whatever one you pick up is what you go with. And that's really borne out in our market. I think I know the favourite is number 5, which is a 3-1 favourite, and the rank outsider is a Hard Western All Summer at about the $9 mark, 8-1 mark. So there's just, really there's nothing between most of them. I think you can make a case for most of them, albeit not a strong case. So it really is just a race that we'll put up the market and watch what the punters decide and just roll with it. But as far as having an opinion, I'll be cheering Nick on. Good luck with Free Dancer. And as Nick mentions about the $4.40 chance, which is a tick under 7-2 in the fractional odds landscape, Pete.
That makes sense, and we'll see. So yeah, you're going to decline to give anything resembling a selection there.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's a no bet race for me. I think you don't have to have a bet. I mean, we always like to have a bet, but you don't have to. But I mean, that would be a race that's happy to play it from. Happy to set the markets and play around with them. But as it stands right now, no real opinion.
Let's move on to race number 3 with that in mind. We've got $7,500 claimers, 1 mile and 70 on the dirt, field of 7. This is another race where there's not a huge spread, at least in the morning line, between the top of the market and the bottom of the market. Is that how you put it up fixed odds wise, Dallas?
I'll if you give me 1 sec for the screen to tick over. Yeah, Peter, we've got 3 equal favourites. Super Shoes, Tempestuous, and Ludo, all equal picks at 3-1, $4 on decimal. Ahead of Gus K at 9-2 or $5.50, and then 5-1 or $6 for El Fantasma. So again, a very, very tight race. But I like the chances of Tempestuous. It was the one that I personally marked shorter than the other price sources. I thought it probably gets the good run just coming across, and probably just being able to either, depending on what they do on the inside, it can probably either just sit on them, or if they don't go, it can take it up itself. So I just thought it gets the right run and look to have the right form lines for mine. And Tempestuous was the one that I liked in the race. But again, as you said, it is a competitive race.
Quick word on the decimal odds. Now, folks that are interested in this and are interested in Monmouth in general, definitely check out our Monmouth meet preview. Very pleased with the way that one came out. And we go deeper into this. But the easiest way to convert a decimal odd to an odd that you're more familiar with is simply to subtract one, or subtract the stake from the bet. So when Dallas, and he's doing a great job recapping it as we go, but if you're doing it yourself and you see a horse that's 14.0 decimal, that's a 13-1 shot.
Exactly.
To 2.0, that's even money, and it just goes on from there. Very, very simple. It'll take you like half a second or maybe an hour to get used to doing it, and then it becomes very intuitive. Nick, let's bring you back in to get your thoughts on your approach to this race at Monmouth.
Yeah, this is a redrawn race from last Saturday when racing was canceled, and a couple of the horses that were added to the field really will both be influential in terms of how it turns out, including Super Shoes, who Dallas mentioned as one of the choices. This horse broke his maiden last time out against $10,000 maiden claimers at Tampa. I think that compares pretty favorably to the beaten claiming variety at the $7,500 level. I felt like Tempestuous made a lot of sense as well. I know the horse won an off the turf race last time out, but he had run respectably on the dirt prior. And I think pace-wise was really up against it 2 starts back. So finally putting it all together, this feels like a horse who still has some upside. Made his winning move through on the inside last time out. Not always the easiest thing at Tampa. So I still think there could be a bit of improvement in Tempestuous when all is said and done. So I would lean pretty heavily on him, but both Super Shoes and Ludo are horses that merit some consideration as well. And we'll see who can take that form from Oldmar, Florida, and bring it up to the Jersey Shore.
That's the question here. So to recap those in terms of numbers, you had the 1 and the 4 on the A line, with the 5 and
6 as backups. Gus K would be my other one.
Gotcha. Excellent. Okay. Race number 4, Jersey Breds. We got 3 and up filly and mare maidens competing for a nice little purse here, going 5.5 on the dirt. Nick, how are we going to get through this leg?
It felt, this is another race that was brought back from last Saturday. Random Luck actually had the rail last Saturday and has an outside post in here, being in the 8 post, which I think is a big advantage. She is a Jersey bred who debuted against Open Company at Parks and tried to rally into a pretty slow pace that day, made a move when it was pretty much all over but the shouting, and likely benefits from the experience gained in that performance. So I would use Random Luck and Big Lee's Legacy. Kind of chalky here. I don't really see much of an opportunity to take on a price horse that can beat one of them. You have some horses that have shown some ability, including Amazing Grace's Joy. She kind of woke up last time out on a sealed track, but does look like a major pace player in a race that isn't exactly overloaded with speed. So I'd probably focus on the 6 and 8 and find a way to include the 3 and 5 as alternatives.
Makes sense to me. Dallas, how about this race from a fixed odds perspective? That Amazing Grace's Joy that Nick gave a nice mention to, 8-1 on the morning line. Where do you have her?
Amazing Grace's Joy is $7.50. So that is 13-2, which doesn't exist in your language, but
a little over 6-1.
Yeah, a fat 6-1, as we were saying. Obviously, they're tricky horses to price. Big Lee's Legacy, you've got obviously the clear top form, but it's on the turf, so obviously that makes it a challenge. But it's still opened up favourite at about the 5-2 mark, $3.50, just ahead of Random Luck, $3.80. So it's a Random Luck, you would say, is a fatter 5-2. And Big Lee's Legacy is a rubber stamp 5-2. They're the top of the markets, with Amazing Grace's Joy and Pastino's Prophecy, the next 2 at that $7.50 mark, 13-2, or a fat 6-1.
Anything catch your fancy? You're particularly worried about, in terms of a selection?
Well, it's. I mean, I as a novice on the US racing scene, I'm still getting the off the turf and on the turf thing around my head, but. Again, it's hard to go for me. It's hard to go past Paco Lopez and Big Lee's Legacy, but obviously from a bookmaking point of view, it is also a horse that you're happy to take on because it's got obviously maybe a little bit shorter distance than ideal, and the yet to be really yet to be rubber stamped on the dirt track. So there are question marks. Obviously, it'll be. I'm sure as far as the betting goes, there'll be backers, lots of backers and lots of layers for Big Lee's Legacy, which makes it a good horse, an interesting horse from a watching the market point of view, because I think there'll be pushes and pulls on it. So that usually equates to a very interesting watch of what happens with the market and whether they decide to end up zoning in on that or basically throwing it out the door. I mean, this horse could start anywhere from even money to 8 to 1, depending on how the market goes and reacts to it. So that always makes for interesting swings and roundabouts and, interesting viewing on if you want to get into watching how the market will evolve.
You make such a good point. And obviously from our point of view, Nick, that's the key question. This is a horse, I'd be happy to take on as a heavy favorite, but I mean, obviously you include in your reckoning and are assuming there might still be a little bit of value in here, but it's a very difficult one. Layoffs make things tough to price up, and I would imagine that those surface switches too.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. No doubt about it. Well, go ahead, Dallas.
No, go, Nick. Go for your life.
No, I was going to say the other thing is that, we really don't have any dirt form for this horse, right? 2 prior starts, last year at 2, don't want to count the debut against him. It's a small-time barn, but Paco gets on, and that's really the biggest angle. You're talking about human connections more so than the horse's actual performances, because on her form on the dirt, she'd be a 10 or 15 to 1 shot. So, for those of us wise guys over the years that have said, oh, we'd rather book that horse, now you're actually given the opportunity to book that horse.
Yes,
so, we'll see. This is one that, generally from my perspective, I would be, like you kind of alluded to, Pete, I would be more inclined to let somebody bet with me than to really push too hard. But in the context of putting together an early pick 5, I think is a horse that you would definitely have to use.
Let's talk about race number 5, the pay leg for the win early pick 5, the bringing back of the Long Branch Stakes with this field of 6. We got Dean's List in here, who projects to be the favorite, might have a pace advantage for brand name connections in Pletcher and Paco Lopez. Nick, how are we going to get paid?
Yeah, this is a race that also was carded for last Saturday. It had one more speed horse in it last Saturday too. So Dean's List job actually got a lot easier. There was a horse named Fluid Situation for John Terranova, who was coming in off a really impressive wire-to-wire win at Tampa and got, I think, a 94 Beyer speed figure. He is not going to play this time around, and that really works to Dean's List's advantage. He should get control of this race pretty much shortly after the start. I think the only real worry pace-wise is Benevengo, and knowing Paco's style, if he ends up putting Dean's List into more of a stalking spot on the outside, I don't think that presents much of an issue. So he is supposed to win. The worry with him is, does he really want to go 2 turns? Is he firmly a horse that is going to be at his best at 1 mile and 70 yards or more? The dam side is pretty sprinty. Mildly Offensive was a very, very solid sprinter. The lone try at 1 mile was the Gotham, so you don't want to hold it against him too much because he did run well to be second. But those are the big issues. I mean, I think as far as the pick 5 goes, you close it out with him. And I thought that the interesting off the pace horses were Dash Attack and Smarten Up. A little bit for me more so than Glider, who I think is now just a little bit exposed and doesn't really look like all that much. Dash Attack's also getting Lasix for the first time, which I think is a little bit of a somewhat noteworthy, given that he did show some real ability early in his career.
A little bit interesting in internal fractions wise too, that Dash Attack, though.
Right.
Dean's List is going to be tough to down. Dallas, how short are you planning on opening up Dean's List?
Yeah, about a tick over even money. Peter, it's $2.20 at the moment, which is 5 to 4 in the fractional markets. Its favourite, as we spoke about last week, we expect to be taking a lot of money on this horse. Obvious, you really don't have to be a racing super scientist to work it out. You've got a favourite in a stakes race ridden by Paco Lopez, trained by Todd Pletcher. Horses like that just are going to get back no matter what price you put them up at. But we've gone up evens, and I agree with Nick. It does look probably, or at 5 to 4, I should say. It does look probably a better setup for Dean's List this week. And the horse that I sort of almost like to beat it last week in Glider. as Nick mentioned, with that withdrawal of the who was going to be one of the leaders, probably makes it easier for Dean's List and harder for Glider. So, look, I'm looking at these prices now, thinking I'm a little bit scared that I'm seeing black. I think we might by the time we finish this, that price might be red. That looks a little bit generous to me in that field. So, but at the moment, it'll go up. It'll go up at 5 to 4, but I would probably say shop early to avoid disappointment.
How quickly will you change a price like that, Dallas? Like once you've said, how do you have to keep it up at a certain number for a certain amount of time? Like how does that work?
Not at all. Basically now that once we've set the markets, most of the changes just become a function of the marketplace themselves. So it's just a seesaw. Money comes on that horse, that'll shorten the price, or if there's a lack of interest in it, as a bookmaker or as the person, as a company facilitating the odd setting, is basically then you'll try and roll that horse out to start getting some action on it. So it's sort of like it's a supply and demand thing. That from this point on, when the markets are up, is generally that. Obviously, if there's unforecast or unfactored in weather changes that come into, or if there's a bit of rain, that'll have it, or a significant bias as we spoke about last week. But generally now, when the markets are up, the market is going to be the driver of the changes itself. So those prices will probably not move until some action starts, and then when it does, it becomes the game of trying to attract clients onto or punters onto the horses that we want them to back.
Nick, would you take that 5 to 4, 6 to 5, basically in our betting language, or is it just the right price? Would it be more of a hang fire?
Is it too cheeky if I say it depends on what he is on the tote? But no, I mean, this is a horse who could end up 3 to 5 or 4 to 5 on the tote. So yeah, I mean, if I believe pretty strongly that he can win, that he's supposed to win, then yeah, I'm going to take 6 to 5. So in that circumstance, yes. This is the funny thing to me about this is that we're so tote oriented in this country. And so getting people to understand that fixed odds opportunities may be the most prolific and the most interesting on horses that are actually shorter prices is going to take some time, but it's going to be fun to see people evolve in that way of thinking, because there was a long period of time where I would talk to you, Pete, about horses that you maybe had backed with the help of getting some prices overseas. And, and I would think, well, why is he so excited about getting 5 to 1 on that horse? And I was like, holy cow, that horse is 2 to 1, right? I mean, that's a huge price. It's a huge disparity. So we're just not conditioned to think that way. But yeah, I mean, this is a circumstance where you would any of us be surprised if Dean's List opens at 1 to 2? Not at all. So getting down at 6 to 5 would certainly have a great deal of appeal on that.
Yeah. One more race we're going to talk about. It's the other feature of the day. 3 and up filly and mare Jersey breds in the Spruce Fur handicap, 6 furlongs on the dirt. Big field of 10 here, Dallas. Let's get your overview of the market and see if you have a fancy for us.
Yeah, definitely do. Just calling it up now. And would you be surprised that Paco Lopez is on another favourite? Oh, my God. Alta Velocita is, again, 6 to 5 in your language or thereabouts, $2.20 decimal. Pretty obvious pick. Impossible not to do anything other than market at a shorter price favourite. It's ahead of Bramble Bay at the 7 to 2 mark, $4.60 in our language. And the next in the betting are Dantastic at $6.50 and Roselba and Jersey Jewel both $7 or 6 to 1 on the fractional world.
What do you think about this, Nick? Who is that too short on the favorite? I mean, it does look like a perfect pace setup, but it's open enough that this is one where I'd hesitate a bit more.
Yeah, she's a deserving heavy favorite. I mean, maybe heavy is a bit much, but she's going to be a pretty solid favorite. The public can see the win at 2 to 1 the last time she faced Jersey bred stakes horses at Monmouth with Paco, and the public loves running lines that they can take and equate to the current day, right? And so you take that line, you put it in, even same distance, similar kind of horses. So I think she's going to be embraced pretty heavily. I guess the horse that you might find some value on is Bramble Bay, depending on how you feel, because Bramble Bay's run some dirt races that very much put her in the mix, including the Jersey Girl last summer, albeit it was on a wet track, so something worth remembering. But that was a dirt race that I think was plenty solid enough to be considered a real contender. So if her price were to drift maybe to the 4-1 type range, she would become a little bit more interesting as well. Fantastic's the other horse who I would probably give some consideration to taking on a price of 5-1 or so, because she's second off the layoff and really ran a good race last time out. Also should get the benefit of that pace setup.
8, 9, 3, pretty equally for you there, Nick?
I would say so. I mean, I think the 8 is a likelier winner, but in terms of any multi-race plays, I mean, I might press the 8 a little bit more, but make sure I have plenty of 3 and 9.
Okay, maybe I'll call the 8 alone A with the 3 and 9 behind then for you. For notes purposes, Dallas, there's so much other fixed odds questions and such, but we'll have a chance to talk about them again next week. Show's running a little bit long here, so we'll leave it here for now. But folks, know you can get down to Monmouth. Sort of the first full. It is the first full weekend for fixed odds. We should also mention about. Just give a special shout out to June 4th, because there's so much happening at Monmouth that day, between the Pick Your Prize Challenge and the fact that that's really the official launch, right? BetMakers Day at Monmouth. Do we know what the program is going to look like for that yet?
Yeah, Pete, we're just building it up. Jennifer and our marketing team are doing a terrific job building it out. So, yeah, I mean, these first few weeks, and even up until that day, it's all about just the gradual build, getting all the processes up and running, and extending upon week in week. And hopefully that includes actually having a race meeting to go to on a Saturday too. So you can go there and make the mistakes and then fix them up, but you need to do that in practice. But yeah, so I think for BetMakers Day, as you said, June 4, that's going to be the day that we sort of anticipate having it ramped up to another level from what we are now. And yeah, there'll be heaps of promotion, heaps of free bets, just basically trying to push the word around about what fixed odds is all about. So there'll be lots of educational things going on, and as well as as I said, lots of giveaways, and which they're working on at the moment, and lots of, as I said, most importantly, for anyone who likes having a bet, free bets is the best thing to be giving away.
We should do a live show. That day. We're going to have a lot of people around. We could tie it all in, production meeting in the middle of the show. We'll get that figured out soon. Now, Nick, I presume, especially with you getting here for Belmont and your announcing duties, that you will not be able to be there for June 4th, but I know that's a tournament that at least you've had your eye on.
Yeah, I've actually never played it. I've wanted to, but it always comes up right before the Belmont, so it's been difficult for me. Yeah, we have 5 or 6 stakes races at Sam Houston that night, so unfortunately, I will only be there in spirit. But I'm going to get to Monmouth at some point over the summer for sure, and stop by and see how everything's going. I love Monmouth Park, so the fact that you have this offering now with it just adds to the appeal.
We're talking about, I don't know if you're going to be in Saratoga for a Monday, but maybe we'll plan around you. We're thinking about doing a bus ride down for getting it sponsored, etc., and doing a bus ride from Saratoga to Monmouth day trip for a Monday. That might be an interesting.
That'd be cool. Yeah,
we'll talk about that off air as well. All right, gentlemen, and I use that term loosely. We'll be talking
very loosely.
Today's show's also brought to you by the Golden Hour Double and Pick 4. You're going to be hearing about those in the next segment. We thank our sponsor, Santa Anita. Some really nice wagering opportunities going on there now. The late Pick 5 payout on Saturdays and Sundays, averaging over $4,700 for a 50-cent bet. Some big opportunities coming up with Gold Cup weekend, May 28th through May 30th. Gold Rush Day on Saturday. 5 competitive Calbred races with a $500,000 guaranteed late pick 5. You can also compete in the $500 live money challenge on Saturday on ExpressBet or on track. On track players get a shot at a $5,000 bonus as well. Hollywood Gold Cup Day is on Monday. 3 grade ones, $500,000 again guaranteed in the late pick 5, as well as a mandatory payout in that Rainbow Pick 6. And there's a $1,500 Gold Cup challenge on ExpressBet or on track. NHC spots Pegasus World Cup seats. And once again, on track players get that shot at the $5K bonus. And of course, we're going to be having the Golden Hour bets those days. We talk about them all the time. Player friendly, $1 minimum in the pick 4, $5 minimum in the double, and a very player friendly 12% takeout. Check it out. Lots of great information on handicapping, etc. over at santaanita.com. Check it all out under the handicapping section, santaanita.com. Last but not least, we bring in another returning guest to the show. Very happy to have him on from Trip Note Pros, one of the best trip handicappers that I know out there in the world. His actual birth name you see it up there on the screen, is Ryan Flanders. But around here, we call him by his adopted name, Benny Southstreet. Benny, what's going on, buddy?
It's good to be with you. You know, I get asked all the time, why Benny Southstreet? And I have to give them the backstory with you giving me my stage name. It's kind of funny.
You got to love guys and dolls. It seemed to fit. You seem to like it. It does seem like you're using, you're more, if you catch this reference, these days you're a bit more Don Novello than you are Father Guido Sarducci. You seem to be using your proper name a little bit more.
I have no idea what you just made reference to, but I'm going to assume everyone else does.
The best references are always the ones you have to explain. There was a comedian who was known when he would go around in the talk show circuits. His character was a priest, and his name was Father Guido Sarducci, but in reality he was a dude named Don Novello who wrote a bunch of other stuff under his own. Sometimes it's just good to have a stage name and a regular name. It gives you more possibilities.
It does, actually. I can be a jerk if I want to. I can just be Benny, and then if I want to be the nice guy, then I can use my real name. I get the best of both worlds.
I think that's very shrewd, and no surprise that you came up with that one. I'm going to put out a plug for a podcast we did at this point a couple of years ago. Maybe I'll even dig and find it. But our pod that we did about your life backstory, I hope you got some good feedback on that. Frankly, I'm surprised it hasn't been optioned as a film. I thought it was such a good podcast.
You know, it's funny. I've had some people want to write a book about my life. It is kind of unique. I mean, we touched on some of the bigger points, but it's been interesting. It's been peppered with a lot of good and bad, mostly good. But that certainly was an interesting time back when we committed grand larceny versus the Padres.
and the Agua Caliente backstretch came into play in some of those stories.
Of course, that was a great place. What kid wouldn't want to grow up in Mexico, eat nachos all day, and run the backside of Caliente? It was a great place to grow up.
Let's talk for a second about the latest chapter before we dive into some of this handicapping. Trip Note Pros, you guys are doing some great work. I see your footprint ever expanding on social media, on media, on the santaanita.com website, where you can get free trip notes for the entire meet. What are you guys covering? How can folks get involved? What's the latest with the company?
Well, we've kind of had a different approach than just going out and trying to get to individuals. So we've been working directly with the tracks. We had a great spring meet with Keeneland, which we gave our product away for free, and then we're doing the same right now with Santa Anita. It's not too late to sign up. You'll get the last few days that we're doing for them for free. Go to santanita.com/Trip Note Pros. We're basically just setting the table for you, where we've got 4 authors that watch a ton of tape, really good at identifying some subtle trouble and some things that can help you along your way when you're playing the horses. And then we've got a quick link at TVG, which offers up 1 or 2 highlight races per day. Typically, that's just Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. But if your ADW is TVG, you can get in there and get the product there as well.
All right, good stuff. Let's talk about this Golden Hour pick 4. We kick off at 7:50 on Saturday night with this 3-and-up maiden race going a mile on the dirt. We've got a field of 6 going forward in this one. Benny, how are we going to light this candle?
Well, I'm going to be singling here, and it's probably a horse that is going to be a good price, and that's Pelagio. This is kind of everything that we believe in. This is a trips play. I watched this one on tape. This one has sneaky speed. If you watch this one on tape, you'll see in the comment section of the PPs, it says step slow, which is accurate. But he's showing a really quick turn of foot. He's quick, a lot quicker than what it shows on paper. And he lost his path. Some inward horses just came in on him, and he couldn't show that speed. He hated the kickback. He was dragged to the middle of the track, and he actually galloped out really well. I think he's going to appreciate the added ground. He's a nice price. Victor, what I know about Victor when he draws inside routing is he's a sender. So I expect him to be hard ridden away from the gate. The outside horse, Gojo 1, drawn outside today, I expect him to sit. So I'm hoping Pelagio can work out a nice trip on the front end. And if they leave him alone, he becomes very dangerous, and he's a square price on the board.
That's very, very interesting. In terms of your betting, just going to use Pelagio, any others?
That's it. I'll take my chance here, and if I'm right, I've got a really good ticket. And if I'm wrong, I can just settle for the golden hour double.
Well, there you go. And that is one thing I love about getting aggressive early in these golden hour pick fours. I was going to do that with number 2, One More Bid. My hope being, Pelagio breaks down inside. I was thinking Gojo 1 might go, or maybe they could hook up. Maybe it can set up for a horse that I think is going to come from just a little bit off the pace, stalking and pouncing. Really, the angle on One More Bid is a class angle. It faced a couple of gorillas in Taba and Set Sail, who heads east to contest the Peter Pan on this day. I thought One More Bid was interesting for Ryan Hansen and Tyler Bays in this spot. We will see. I think I will certainly, after your strong case, be using the 1 as a backup in that spot as well. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and put that in my notes. That sends us up north, my friend, to their 8th race, where we've got 3 and up fillies in an allowance race going 6 furlongs on the synthetic. This was a race where you had a very obvious potential favorite in Rose Maddox, who I wanted to use, but I was actually going to make the 7 Dulce Emma the top pick, who I just thought should get an absolutely perfect trip. I thought I had the right blend of speed and stamina. As a horse, as a trier, I thought would just get a little bit of a better setup, and I thought was maybe a little bit better suited by the 6 furlongs today than the 5 furlongs the last day. How do you see this one? I'm going 7-8.
I think the 8's a single. I've got a few underneath that I'll probably use as B's. I'll write some other tickets with the 1, the 2, and the 9. But I really do like the 8, Rose Maddox. She's a terrible gate horse, which always scares me a little bit, but she does tend to recover and run her race. I love the fact that she won on debut at Golden Gate, overcoming a poor start and a wide trip. And she beat Older. I mean, she beat Older at Santa Anita, and she ran lights out on turf against Older at Santa Anita. I do think there's some speed in here with the 9 and the 2 drawn far apart from one another. I expect them to go very fast and set it up for the 8, so I think she'll get the trip as well. And then I do have some good thoughts on the 1, Code Ribbon. I like these 2-year-olds. They move up in their 3-year-old campaign. They tend to improve. I think she's going to sit a nice trip in 3rd. The rail doesn't scare me because I think she'll be forwardly placed. She'll be fresh. She hasn't run in a little while, so I expect her to be fresh. Love that work pattern. 112 flat is lights out, followed up with another legitimate work, albeit a little bit slower in 14 and 3. So I love that workout pattern. I think she sits a good trip. And then the 2 and the 9, if for some reason those would be B's for me. If one of them decides to let the other one go, I think the other becomes dangerous. So I would use those as B's as well.
Yeah, we see that so often, where the 2 you expect to engage, one ends up getting loose, and that you can cover your bases there by including them both as B's, as Betty describes. Back down south for the starter allowance for 3 and up fillies and mares going a mile on the turf that closes out the Santa Anita card and kicks off the golden hour double. Field of 10 goes postward here. Who did you like?
Well, hopefully I'm alive if I start single, which gives me an opportunity to kind of play inefficiently here. This is a spread race for me, obviously. I had negative. I love these races especially turf races, where to me it's about pace, flow, and trip. And we've got several common runners that are coming out of that March 19th race at Santa Anita. And I had negatives on the 2 and the 3 in that race. I also didn't like the 8. I thought the 8 had an absolute perfect trip on the lead in that February 18th race where she went wire to wire. So that one was a toss for me. And then I can't toss any of the others. I want to toss the 3 or rather the 1, because she's 3 years old and she's facing Older for the first time, but she just had a miserable trip last time. I think she's much better than what it shows on paper. Same with the 4. 4 went very fast early last time and really backed into the field. First time routing on turf. I think she's legit. I think that the 6 is interesting. This race at Golden Gate, albeit over the synthetic, is actually pretty good. I went through that field. 5 runners in that race, other than her, combined for 24 wins. And these are no world beaters. I think she's legit. I don't think she needs the lead. I think she probably made it last time because she was a little bit fresh. So I think she can sit a forward trip and score at a decent price. And Ron Ellis has been uber hot. Like I said, I'm pretty deep here. I'm 1, 4, 5, 6, 10, and then I'll pepper in the 7 and the 9 on small tickets. So I'm really only taking a stand against 4 horses, those being the 2, 3, 6, and 8.
I don't like any of those. I think I like the 5 and the 9 coming out of the common race just a little bit more than you do, especially the 5, who I thought had a particularly tricky run in there, sort of throwing the head at the beginning and just being completely out of position and making a little bit of a run. And then I thought Rose's Crystal also you could conjure some excuses for. I mean, clearly you don't totally disagree, as you talked about who you're tossing in that race and you didn't mention them. But yeah, I was, I'll have to take another look at some of the deeper runners, but I was going to try, at least in bets that are kicking off the double piece of things, to get out with the 5 and the 9, though. After hearing you talk, it doesn't sound like I have enough coverage, does it?
I just think it's a tough race. The 5 had all kinds of trouble last time. It's a complete line through. I just, she's 2 for 15. Even though Pratt's not on the circuit, he doesn't choose another runner. Man, Pratt off is it's really tough. So
that's interesting. Even when he's not in the same race, I was thinking the market might, in a weird way, overrate that. You know what I mean? Oh, Pratt off, but Pete ain't here. So what is it? It didn't really bother me, but you still think it's negative.
If you pay attention to me on social media, I'm the self-proclaimed president of Flavien Pratt's fan club.
You've been saying this for years. You were saying this way before it was cool.
I'm getting a lot of hate mail now, and that's fine. People can keep it coming, but I think Pratt is he's special. And a little, if we can go down a rabbit hole just a little bit, his ride in the Derby, I mean, if you're really paying attention to what he does, it's so special. He gets knocked around at the start a little bit and loses his path. He immediately laps. He targets the correct horse, which is no big deal, right? So he's following Epicenter. But in the first turn, if you're really paying attention, he has 2 choices. He can sneak past him, which it looks like he's going to do, and push Epicenter wide, which would be a great thing. But instead, he opts to idle and take back because he wants to use that horse as a target. And Rosario takes the bait. Rosario, you can see him. He's starting to move outside. He dives inside, and the rest is history. He had a perfect trip all the way around the track. He wasn't good enough, but the ride itself was 10 out of 10 for me. It was a beautiful thing to watch.
That's so interesting. In a race where I personally have highlighted the Rosario ride, which I thought was pretty brilliant, not to, obviously the pace told on him too, but to not get caught up in it and to get in a position to win from down at the inside, I thought was impressive. And everybody's going nuts, understandably, over the Sonny Leone ride. You make a compelling case that the Pratt ride was maybe just as good.
Yeah, I mean, Sonny did. He got stopped in the turn too, right? So Rich Strike moved outside and got put into a box, and he had to have some good fortune to end up cutting back to the inside later. But I loved Zandon going in. I don't love him coming out because I just thought he had a perfect trip. What's that?
He doesn't want to go that far, does he? Isn't that the issue with him?
Sure didn't look that way. He had everything cut aside from the start.
He went there to win the race, and he got turned away by a horse, to me, that had a tougher trip in terms of pace dynamics.
Well, Epicenter was one I actually thought did not have a great trip because for 5 furlongs, he moved into the teeth of that very, very hot pace. And I thought Epicenter was best by here to the bunker.
I basically agree. I'm basically on record saying so. I like it when we agree because we don't always, but when we do, it's usually fairly potent. All right.
I don't agree with a lot of people often. So,
well, that's good. That's you're a contrarian, and that's why you're good at what you do. Let's talk about this pay leg, my friend. Race number 9 at Golden Gate on Saturday, 8:15. The scheduled post time for this field of 10 3-year-old maidens, 5.5 on the synthetic. You know what I'm going to say. How are we going to get paid?
Well, again, hopefully I'm still alive and it gives me an opportunity to play inefficiently. I'm 6 deep here. I actually reached out to the chart caller at Golden Gate, number 1 Union Gig. Very interesting that the posted fractions and the PPs are not the same as the fractions that showed up in the replay booth. Those were 21.81, 45.21, and finished in 103.54. So if those are accurate, it doesn't look like quite as big as a meltdown as it should have been. And this horse did not have a good trip. He held his head high right out of the gate. He missed the start. So to me, it's not a horse that just isn't quick. He kind of made a goofy mistake leaving the gate, and he actually showed pretty good speed to get back into the race. So the one was going to be a use for me. I like there are a few that were troubled out of the gate, and I'll be using all of those because they all ran on just fine. Those would be the 1, the 4. Let's see, who else did we have here? And the 8. All 3 of those trips were just miserable. I love the workout pattern on the 10. I'm not a big fan of the pedigree, given that he's bred to run about 1.5 miles.
Yeah.
How
can this not be too sharp for this horse with the Kerrone and an AP Indy dam going 5.5? I mean, this
is true. I agree with you, but I love the 5/8 gate work pattern. And one thing that I will say is, good horses can win at any distance. They just run better at their preferred distance. So first time out, the workout pattern to me is too good, where I will be using the 10. And I find it interesting that Miati's got him up there as well, trying over the synthetic. The 7 was going to be a use for me as well. I know it's, a maiden claiming race, but if you watch this one on tape, wow, is this one fast? Absolutely rank and pulling. It shows a tracking trip, that's true, but they had about 5 lengths clear of the nearest stalker and was just dragging this rider around. Don't see a whole lot of speed in here. That one could get loose and become dangerous as well. So I had 1, 4, 5. Love the work pattern on the 5 as well. 2 very sharp 5/8 works followed up with a gate work. Thought that was a very solid work pattern. So 1, 4, 5, 7, 8, 10.
Big old spread from Benny to close things out at Golden Gate. You do make a good point. I'm not going to use the horse, but this horse, the 10, a roller coaster ride. I'm talking about this like it's Saratoga and it's Golden Gate. And so you might well be right. Even if the horse is seen suboptimally compared to his ability, it could easily still be enough to win a synthetic maiden at Golden Gate. So maybe I was being too harsh with that one. I loved the 4. I loved Smiling Val in this spot. A lot of angles that I like. You mentioned the trip. I totally agree that was impossible. And you have the fact that this horse was bet to 4-1 on debut. That indicates to me that Smiling at Val has more speed and then just didn't break that day. So I think this horse is going to have a lot more pace and has a lot of room to improve. Did some running on debut. I was going to press Smiling at Val for sure. And I'm very intrigued by your point about Union Gig, and we'll be including the 1 as a backup as well. Maybe I'll get super spready with all your runners. Oh, I shouldn't. That term means something else these days. Maybe I'll get very inclusive and include a few more of your backups on some combinations. But my official reckoning of the race is going to be the 4 as an A and the 1 as a B. Any other final thoughts from you, Benny, before we send this episode of the show home?
Come on out to Santa Anita. May 28th, I'll be there. I'll be doing a little work for Karma. Come on out, take care of the horses, have a great day at the great race place. I am a little curious, what does super spreader mean? You got me a little thinking. I don't know what that means, but
I was thinking of it in terms of the pandemic.
I got you. Yeah, of course.
You don't want to have anything to do. You don't want to have anything to do with that as far as that goes. And for those that don't know, we love aftercare around here. Obviously, since day 1, we've been associated with the Thoroughbred Retirement Foundation, and we have all ways you can help them over at trfinc.org/players. But for those that don't know, California Retired Management Account Karma is a 501c3 dedicated to funding, rehabilitation, retraining, etc. Important organization out there in California that Benny's working with. So yeah, show up. What's the date of your appearance you're doing?
I believe it's the 28th. I know it's the weekend of the 28th, but I'm 90% sure it's May 28th.
Go hang out with Benny. See Santa Anita. It's such a beautiful place. And if you happen to be out of touch and don't like Flavian Pratt, you can also just try to knee him in the plums.
Love it.
All right, good stuff. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for your insights as ever. that's going to do it for this edition of the show. Let's see if I can remember them all. Usually I take notes. So today we're going to do it on the fly. I think I can do it. We're going to thank JK. We're going to thank Nick Tammaro, who did 3 separate segments with us. Jessica Paquette, who was so good on the questions about Rich Strike's behavior after the race and all that stuff. Dallas Baker, Benny Southstreet. Really appreciate your contributions. Most of all, and I haven't said this enough recently, most of all, want to appreciate all of you, the listeners and viewers, for making these shows so much fun to do and are giving us so much support of this content on YouTube, where you should rate, review, and subscribe. And also wherever you get your podcasts, especially iTunes, where we appreciate if you subscribe to the In the Money media feed. Our founding partners, just talked about TRF. What about 10 Strike Racing? They've been here since the beginning too. Love to root for the purple and black. It was great to hang out with Clay Sanders in Kentucky. And then next week, I get to hang out with Marshall Graham at Baltimore. Going to go to a couple baseball games, going to have some fun. We're covering all our bases with our friends at 10 Strike. This show has been a production of In the Money Media. Our business manager is Drew Coatney. Our chief creative officer is Jonathan Kinchin. I'm Peter Thomas Fornatale. May you win all your photos.